I just want to kind of move through our levels of government and have a conversation with you, maybe starting on the federal end. Where are we sitting?
Well, we are in a bit of a doldrum right now. We have two leadership races going on, both at the federal and at the provincial level. But as you said, accountability is always a good start for us to start discussing things here. What we have is we have a government, the federal government right now, which you just made allusion to, which is in total disarray. They have no policies. I understand that Freeland wants to chase inflation with more spending. I mean, this is totally economically absolutely absurd and ridiculous. We have a government now which has absolutely no accountability. It is being found that the Emergencies Act was a total sham and scam because it was never asked by either the RCMP or the police in Ottawa. So what we are doing here with COVID was a means by which the federal government and other provincial government used it to gain power over the citizens. I mean, by passing mandates, regulations, rules, and so on and so forth. And none of that had any accountability because there was no transparency in any of it. It was just a means of getting and acquiring more powers without discussion. It was just imposed on us. And now that the COVID is virtually over, it's become an endemic as opposed to a pandemic, we see that two of the guys who've pushed for mass sequestration, staying at home, they both have COVID now. Trudeau and Fauci, they still have it. So what does that mean? Having somebody who's had a vaccine, I've had taken my vaccines, being so old, I have to protect myself. If that's true, I may be wrong about this, but I took my vaccine. But what does that say? That Trudeau and Fauci, both vaccinated, boosted, are now getting COVID. I mean, the thing is, was this a situation where we were overcautious? Was it that the death rates that we were told about was not really, in fact, just a blimp over what the death rate has always been in normal times? And what we have now, two races. We have two leaderships. I'm not supporting anybody. I am just looking at what's happening. I want to hear policies. I want to hear some of their ideas. But the fact remains is, as you just mentioned in your previous segment, are going to get rid of Trudeau as easily as some conservatives think they can. It's an illusion. Conservatives must have policies that reflect conservative principles. And that's what I'm waiting for. At the federal level, we are having so many candidates with so many ideas which are from the past. We are in the 21st century. We have a totally different environment, both economically and federally and provincially, that we've got to have new policies into good conservative principles. Never mind social conservatism. Social conservatism is a value issue. But if conservatives want to win, in my point of view, it's all about economics and values of the family. And that's what we've got to look at. And at the federal level, we've got so many people entering the race. And I can tell you, Jean Charest, for instance, is a man of the past. We've got to look to the future. We can't have a man of the past. Brown is now coming out with all sorts of ideas. And I believe other candidates who are entering these races, both at the federal and provincial level in Alberta, are people trying to make a name for themselves so that if a conservative government at both levels go back in power, they will get a seat. If they get elected, they will get a seat in the cabinet. That's all they are. Because some of them are goofs. They have done nothing. They're just entering the race just to get a name recognition. By the same token, I think there are some very good candidates, but they've got to put forward policies that are going to endear and ensure that citizens are going to get better in their lives, in their economic situation, not just by rhetorical proposals by politicians who have absolutely nothing to offer right now.
Yeah, so getting outside of the race, though, I mean, something kind of before you popped on, and what I was saying in the monologue, though, as I said, you can't underestimate these liberals. They're strong. But a development that I just didn't expect to see this year, and I've written about it and I've talked about it, is the Senate. You know, it's usually been a non-entity really in politics, but they stood up and quashed a liberal bill the other day, and they've
Yes.
been holding them to account in committee on this Emergencies Act. I'm kind of excited to see where else they might go here. I mean, outside of the
Well,
party politics.
I would like to see them do something about Bill C-11 because most Canadians don't really understand what C-11 is all about. It's all about suppression of the freedom of speech and expression. What we have nowadays is, and this is not only in Canada, this is becoming a worldwide problem with so many, because don't forget, Biden is not a Democrat. Biden is a socialist verging on communism these days with his policies. And what it is when you get governments who are putting money in the media, for instance, in Canada, what we have now is a new version of what the Soviet Union used to be. You had the TASS agency and you had the Pravda. Most of our media nowadays are paid for and subsidized by a government, and they are just another mouthpiece for the government. So therefore, we've got to rely on the freedom of expression. And what I want to see is a Senate, even with a majority of liberals there, start questioning what is happening to the freedom of Canadians. And we've got to get a situation whereby we have some accountability. And the only place we are going to have that is if the Senate wakes up and says, well, freedom of expression is more important than political values and political ideology as expressed by their leader, Justin Trudeau. I've told you that before, and I've always said, I don't like uh, legacies and dynasties, because every son who gets into politics after their father try to emulate and surpass their father's legacy, and it's always a disaster.
Yeah, and
I mean, history has shown it.
And I'm kind of scared with Justin Trudeau because, you know, even if he is getting on towards the tail end of his time as prime minister, he's got to be feeling that. He's got to be wondering, what am I going to leave behind? What am I going to be able to point to my kids and say I did? Because he really hasn't accomplished a lot. And I fear he's going to do something extreme. Well, not that he hasn't already.
This is what I worry about, because he's looking at a legacy now. And the thing is, if he gets elected again, there's the problem. He will say, oh, this is my last legs in politics. I will push everything that I can, and there is no opposition. I mean, with the NDP supporting him right now, we can see what's going on. I mean, all these leftist policies are being implemented with the help of the NDP. When Freeland says to you that she's going to combat inflation with more spending and she's going to be supported by the NDP, guess what? If people think a recession is coming, it could be the worst one we've seen for quite a while.
Yeah, it's just pouring gas on a fire when you increase the spending to try and battle inflation. But it's a government disconnected from reality. There's no doubt about that. But again, hopefully we can see some lights. You know, maybe the Senate will stand up for some things. Maybe the Conservatives will really rebrand themselves well and hold his feet to the fire so we can watch and hope with some optimism. I'll kind of pivot back now. As you said, there's another important race going on, and that's just kind of starting to develop, and that's the provincial leadership for the UCP. And that's a party that's really kind of on the rocks, and they really need a new shot in the arm to try and, I guess, you know, get back into contention.
Well, there's the Jason Kenney didn't do himself any favors. For sure, every politician in the past 27 months have had to deal with COVID and this pandemic. However, how you deal with it has been the key of how you've been viewed by the electorate. So, having said that, Kenny has decided to step down because he got only 51% of the votes support. Now we have a gaggle of politicians trying to replace him. What Albertans have got to start looking at is asking themselves the question: what is the alternative to a UCP government? Do we want to go back to a Notley government? Do we want to see a new 4 year of socialist policies that virtually destroyed this province? Do we want a government that is going to acquiesce to every climate change policies, good or wrong, imposed by the Trudeau government? So when people start talking about a leader for Alberta, they've got to look at, are we going back to the roots of Alberta's values? What do we stand for? Kenny made the mistake of being too much Ottawa, not enough Alberta. So having said that, I heard this morning that Rempel, who was a campaign manager for Brown, is going to try and come back to Alberta to be in the race to be a leader. Well, are we going to get the same thing again? Too much Ottawa instead of Alberta? Having said that, I look at the gaggle of people who have entered the race, and I say to myself, do we have somebody that is rising to the occasion? So far, I haven't seen anybody yet. That's why I'm saying I'm standing on the sidelines here. I'm just waiting to see policies. I don't want people to start talking about, oh, we want to go back to the kind of Alberta advantage under Klein, the great days of the oil and gas and so on and so forth. What is happening is that we are now under an environment, a global environment, where we have policies being made outside of our jurisdiction that are going to affect us. Most people don't understand what is economic social governance that is being adopted by many countries, and now banks are going to start applying policies and financing through ESG. Do we have a politician in this gaggle of politicians running for leadership who understand the ramification and the consequences of these new policies coming down the pike? And as I said, I haven't seen anybody so far who has explained to me, I want to replace Kenny with a new form of government, a new form of management. I haven't seen any that are going to affect the lives of Albertans, not only at the provincial level, but also at the municipal level, as well as stand for and against good policies coming from the federal government.
Yeah, well, we can wait and see as the campaign develops. As you said, there's a gaggle of them coming out, and we'll see how many actually meet that bar to run. But there's going to be a number to choose from, and hopefully some vision sinks in, and people see something inspiring that'll pull them through.